All right, well, welcome back to the Baseball Blue Book podcast. Excited to have Phill Shallenberger with us at Messiah University. How are you doing, Coach?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Eric?
Things are going very well. It's been a great week. I feel like it's the beginning of fall where I'm at. We had our first frost last night, and the chill in the air. We've got the World Series going, or not quite the World Series yet, but we're getting close. So I love this time of year. How about let's start off real quick, just doing a quick introduction, who you are, your background, and just a couple seconds on Messiah University. We're going to get into that a little bit more later down the road, but just a quick introduction, sir.
Yeah. So this is heading into my second year at Messiah University as the head baseball coach. Actually, took on the job this past year at a unique time. I actually started on towards the end of September, my first day, and then the next day we had practice after my first day on the job. So heading in, just kind of just met that 1 year anniversary at Messiah, and love it here. It's a place that my family and I have had circled, and I have a wife and two little boys. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old that just turned 2 this past week, and they're as much of a part of this as I am.
Awesome.
And then Messiah University is a pretty unique place. I think in terms of Christian higher education, there's not too many places that academically and athletically kind of meet both of those standards. I mean, the motto is pursuing athletic excellence while developing Christian character, and it's evident here. I mean, we've had 36 plus national champions here since 2000,
Wow.
which a lot of schools can't say they have won. We have 36 of them. Baseball not being one of those yet, but it's just really cool to be surrounded by a group of coaches that pursue excellence the way they do, and focus in on truly developing people, not just athletes. And I think that is what makes a lot of the programs here successful, is because they do look at the whole person, not just what they can do on a baseball field. And strong and a lot of great majors, and we have a handful of engineering majors and bio majors on our roster. And so yeah, I think all encompassing, there isn't, in terms of Christian higher education, there aren't too many places that are better than Messiah to be a student athlete.
That's great. Well, I'm excited to get into that a little bit more once we get through some of the questions I have for you. I give everybody a nice opportunity to promote the program and give your 2 cents on it. But that's exciting. So back to when you started last September. So you get hired, and then the next day you have practice. So obviously all those kids are not your kids. They were all kind of coming back from the year before. Real quick, what was the gut feeling? You had to have been the nerves and the butterflies going on. I mean, starting a new job and then going and finding players is one thing, but starting a new job and walking in going, "Hey boys, this is I'm your coach." So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so it was a little bit of a unique situation because I have some connections here already, but also there were 4 players, 3 to 4 players on the roster that I actually worked to recruit at a previous school.
Okay.
So somewhat of a already familiarity with some of the players, where I think the feedback that they gave the players when they found out I was the coach that was hired was very positive. And I think there was just a thirst and a desire to see a program that had a lot of talent, to be able to actually kind of use those talents in order to show how successful they can actually be, and just kind of craving that desire for something a little bit different, something pursuing in the right direction that they felt the program could actually head. And so I remember that first meeting. It was still kind of in the middle of, like, towards the end of COVID. So our first meeting was actually outside, beyond our home plate, like in our blue. And I remember talking with the players and just kind of laying out exactly what we were trying to do, and just wanted to make sure that they knew that they were going to have a coach and a coaching staff that was going to care for them as people first. From that point on, I felt like the guys did a great job buying in. There were just so many things that the upperclassmen did a phenomenal job of just kind of taking to that. It was kind of like my second meeting with them, because my first one was kind of the awkward Zoom call meeting with the introduction from the athletic director, and I was on a screen and they were looking looking kind of the opposite direction of where I was seeing them. So I'm looking at the side of their heads, kind of explaining who I am. So it was a brief 5 to 10 minute uh, introduction. I got the first awkward meeting out of the way over Zoom,
Yeah.
and then was able to really lean on some of the players that already knew me, because like through my recruiting process, it's
Right.
about building relationships with them, and so they knew who I was, even though they told me no. Like they still like I felt like had a mutual respect for
Right.
like what we were trying to do at my previous school and what I was about. So that made it a little bit easier of a transition. Not a little, but still a little bit of anxiousness going into that, with just starting a new program with expectations across the board in an athletic department, that are pretty high in some
Right.
senses. So
You mentioned something about your players feeling like this is a family, like they're going to be taken care of. I've interviewed a number of coaches that are 1 and 2 years and first year guys, and that seems to be a resonating theme. Do you what do you? I mean, you're a young guy. This is taking over a program, and that's something that you want to make sure that you're pointing out to your players that they can count on. Why do you think that is? Do you think that there's been there's a shift? Do you think that that's something that more coaches that are closer to when they played felt like there was a void in kind of the way it used to be done, or is this more of a carryover of something that you've learned from coaches that you've had? So, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a combination of all. I think it's got the blue book and just where you guys started in 1909 and just kind of blending the old with the new. And I think today in baseball, there's this, for some reason, this odd like battle between the new school and the old. There's things you can learn from both of them that actually mesh well together to make a perfect cohesion of what we're.
That's a good point.
So I would say it's a combination. I think
Yeah.
you watch some of the coaches, and I think maybe there was a little bit more of like a tough nose, like kind of like grinder spirit with like I guess the older generation, but I still think there was a lot of care and love for the programs that did it well. I think you just look at some of the coaches that did the best, like even just Agia over in Texas. Like I think he did things that like still cared players. It didn't mean he wasn't tough on them,
Right.
but they knew that they could go to him at any moment as an individual and speak truth to each other through that. So for me, it's a combination of everything. I've seen coaches in my past that have truly cared for me. For example, my head coach at my alma mater taught me more about what it looked like to be a great father and a great husband than I even did just baseball. And
Right.
While there were times where during my time there, we did have successful seasons, winning our conference, making a regional. I had some times that were pretty tough, but I would say my 4-year experience wasn't based on what the wins and losses were on the field, but truly just knowing that there was a care that he had for us beyond
Yep.
just baseball. And so that's kind of where my philosophy, like, and what I've kind of jumped into, and just knowing that kind of like what I'm kind of think through, and being a father has truly changed some of that. I see, like, I want to be a coach that I would love to send my boys to go play for.
Yep.
And I think about like being pretty protective of your own sons in some ways, where you're going to be pretty cautious about who they go play for and want to know that they're cared for beyond just being able to perform on a baseball field. Because, be honest, even guys that we recruit that we think are going to be great players may not end up being great players on the field, but they still are a part of that roster and a part of that team, where if you only care what they do on the field, then you kind of lose an ability to impact them greater than that.
That's a great point. And you bringing up your own boys, I've got a 3-year-old as well. And you want somebody that you can entrust your kids to, but you also know that it's not just about coddling them either, right? As they get older, it's some tough love as well, and so it is a balance. I like how you just said that. You brought the blue book into it, but it's more the young, the new and the old, the blend. There's baseball hasn't changed, right? It's that the theories that we bring things that we need to really focus on, of how to create the young men of and our leaders for tomorrow. That's everybody I talk to. It's more of a focus on raising young men than it is developing a first baseman, right, or a third baseman, or a hitter, or so. Those, obviously, that's what you're doing, and that's what your responsibility is. But number one, raising these young men, and I think that's pretty awesome. And I love it how you tied that into the school as well, because obviously the message from a Messiah University perspective is creating character on and off the ball field, and I think that's pretty awesome. So let's get. I got a couple questions. I always know when I do these, and it's going to be a good conversation. Is I barely get to the questions, so this has been a good already. So let's go way back. When did you start, and when did you know that baseball was something that you wanted to be part of, maybe be beyond the field?
Yeah, I've had a unique journey. I worked in higher ed in many facets, not just coaching. Part of the reason I had the ability to stay in coaching at times was because I worked in other departments within the university that gave the flexibility to maybe volunteer as a coach or maybe help out when I was able to. And to be truthful, I just had never thought about coaching because I was so passionate about playing the game that like it just never really crossed my mind. And I think as a catcher, I've seen this with all catchers to some extent, but as a former catcher when I was growing up, like you just see the game a little bit differently than I think anybody else does on the field. Yeah. Where I think kind of looking back at it like retrospectively and seeing like, oh, that's kind of probably where it started, where I love the fact that my coaches let me call the game because I felt like I had control of what was I could dictate the way the game was played.
Yep.
Because I got to call pitches, I got to try to keep hitters off balance. I was analyzing the way hitters approached a certain fastball or like what they look like on an off-speed pitch, and so I think there was analyzing that a little bit more from a catching standpoint that I think led to coach. But I wouldn't really even say, even when I was a GA, I think it was just something that I did because like, oh, I get to stay in baseball. And it was just like, oh, cool, I get to be a GA, I get my master's degree. Right. Not sure what I'm going to do. Then after my GA ship, I ended up being a resident director. So what that is like you ever see a residence hall on campus and you kind of live amongst the students in some ways. Yep. On campus and kind of help them grow and develop that way. Go to MBAD, and then so each stint though of being an RD, I was able to get plugged into the baseball program, and the first time was at Cairn University, a really small Christian school just outside of Philadelphia, and I was an RD, and the coach asked if I wanted to help, and we're talking about a program at the time that had 3 straight seasons of like 8-win seasons in a 40-game season, so pretty tough, but yeah. And I took over that program when it was I was an assistant at the time, and the season before, I just told the coach, I was like, hey, I can help out in these areas. Just let me run the pitchers. Like, I'll run the pitching staff, and you can kind of take care of the rest. And I was looking at the stats the year before, and it was a walk for every day of the year. They had 365 walks in a 40-game season. And I was just like, well, that's part of the reason why you're not going to win too many games in that way. Yeah. And truthfully, we weren't good that year either. My 2 years as an assistant, we had 8 and 9 wins, but we did. One of our goals was to cut those walks in half, and we got close to it. And that's great. But the cool part was that was where my passion for coaching actually was rekindled, even amongst really challenging games and getting 10-run ruled or losing by 10 runs at least 20 times. And I think that. And it's kind of weird, but that's where my passion was rekindled. I started developing those relationships with the players. I got to see growth, and that growth looked different than what maybe some coaches want to see, like in terms of that, but the desire to get better, but also the impact that you can have in guys' life through just having the vessel of baseball. Because we tell this, I talk to faculty and staff about this all the time, but we get 40 to 50 hours a week with our guys when we're traveling and in season and practice, and they get maybe 4 or 5 like during the course of the week. And so just being able to have that vessel to be able to utilize that, so that's kind of where I would say the coaching passion started, was when I was kind of a volunteer assistant, when I wasn't even planning on doing it. I just took a job full-time in student affairs and got asked to help. And that was really where my passion was rekindled before diving into that. And still at the time wasn't sure if that was exactly the career I was going to take, but that's where I definitely felt the passion was kind of kindled right there.
It's I think it's a better path to it to assist on a really bad team, develop character, and then realize, wow, I want to do this. Because I'd hate to take a coaching job thinking you want to be a coach, having a terrible year and going, whoa, this is not what I want to do. So I think that's pretty awesome to see that from character building is where passion comes, and you can really go, hey, it's not about the wins and losses. It's about the development and the impact that I can have on other people. And that's absolutely right. You said 40 to 50 hours. I mean, the amount of time that a coach has in front of these kids is at times more than what parents have, even when they're going, raising the kids. Coaches have so much influence. They have so much effect on what kids do. And it's why you always want to hire a guy that's been in sports, or a guy or a girl that's been in sports, because they've had such good influences, and even bad influences are a good influence. It's somebody that they have to figure out how to please at times, figure out what their requirements are of getting to where they want to be. I mean, there's so many dynamics in the whole world of athletics and the dynamics between a coach and a player. So I think that's pretty awesome. And Phill, that's good. So the next one, so we got that, why coaching? So right now, obviously, you went into this really that COVID time, a whole lot of changes in culture. There's a cultural revolution going on right now. It's hitting everything. Obviously, Messiah's probably a little bit more conservative from that perspective. But what do you see that what do you like the most about the changes that are happening? And then what do you think are the biggest challenges that we have in the next 5-10 years with what's going on?
I think there's so many positive things about these group of individuals that we get to coach. I know I can't just ask them to do something without having a purpose behind it. And we talk to them. Our purpose drives our consistency of what we do on a daily basis. And like, if I don't have a purpose behind why we ask them to do something, they're going to call me on it pretty quick. And we try to create that safe space for that, like for them, allow them to kind of ask those questions. But it also keeps us as coaches on our toes a little bit, where it's
Absolutely.
like, hey, why are we doing this? If we can't give a reason why we're doing it that day with a legitimate purpose behind it, instead of just like, oh, because we need you to do this. Like, for us, it's there has to be a purpose behind it. So I think is a positive piece, where these guys like truly about why we're doing stuff. It's not just like doing it blindly because the coach asks us to, but they do care about why we're doing it. So having a purpose to give them through that is really positive. I think on challenging and the kind of the next 4 to 5 years, what I see the most challenging is just how much they are influenced by what happens behind the cell phone. And just like their education a lot of times coming into college is what they see on their social media accounts, or what they Google, or what they see on Twitter, which are mostly opinions, not necessarily facts.
Right.
That kind of shapes who they are. Like, that shapes like their development, where we have so much access to information, which is great. But it also provides opportunities for information that may not be truthful to kind of creep into who they're developing to. And I think we're even seeing that, and we're really big on who our culture is and what we're building, but we have our faults and our cracks that we're working through stuff even currently as a team to, hey, why did you make this decision? Or what was it that thought this was an okay thing to do? And a lot of it stems back from, and it scares the crap out of me. It's like knowing how much they're influenced and even, I guess, parented in a way by things that are outside of even their household. And so I would say that's probably the biggest challenge, is there's so much information that they have access to. And the hardest thing for them is to decipher what's right and what's true. I think that's that's where helping them navigate those pieces. My wife's actually a elementary school teacher, and she talks about this all the time of just like the importance of educating even elementary students on the use of social media and what they learn from those things. So I would say that's going to be the biggest challenge. I think a lot of us coaches kind of can resonate on that and talk through that of like, how do we help them decipher what is true and what's great and things that they should be following on social media and things that are helpful. And even when they see things that maybe aren't helpful, how do they decipher like, hey, how do I work through this then? What does that look like to,
Right.
oh, I disagree with that, but the world's telling me that I should agree
Right.
with it, and kind of using that balance. So I think for me, that's the biggest challenge that I think we face currently, but also what we're going to continue to face over the next 4 to 5 years. The COVID thing obviously making that even more prevalent. Like they can't they're only through a computer screen
Yeah.
or a phone.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that just we're seeing that we're seeing that start to really come into effect with these the generation of student athletes that are coming in right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that's really good. You know, we talk about purpose. We talk about, you know, it's not expectation, it's purpose. It's building character. And I think really the underlying thing of everything. And again, I've raised two sets of kids. I have daughters that are in their 20s and out and on their own, and now we adopted some boys that are, my youngest is 3, and the dynamic, the changes are, it's like we're in different centuries. From raising my kids just 20 years ago versus what's going on today. But I always go back to that foundation. You have a foundation and you have people in your life like a Coach Shallenberger that's really creating purpose behind that. And all of a sudden, then all of this additional information doesn't necessarily matter, because I think that's what it is. When it's the overwhelming of information, it's now all of a sudden everybody's questioning everything. Everybody's questioning how they do things. If you have a foundation and you have that character and you're looking for purpose, I think that is really a shield between that overwhelming of what's out there today. And I think, you know, coaches like you've gone through it, you've seen it, you know the transition of what's going on, and I think that's really, really important going forward with these kids. So I appreciate that. That was a good answer. What is your biggest success, Coach? Just in life. I hear about marriage and having kids. Beyond the marriage and having kids, because that was my biggest success too. What is your, you know, from a career or something that happened, and I always have to define this because I ask it and then I'm not happy with the answer. So it's overall, was it a clutch hit in the bottom of the ninth when you were in high school? Was it you called a game that just you really felt like it was good back in the day, or was it you landed this really good play, or was it, hey, I helped a kid out of an amazing situation and he's where he's at now is awesome. So that's kind of it's a broad stroke, but what do you think from thinking of all of these things? What would you consider your biggest success?
Yeah, I guess if you're going to ask loaded questions, hopefully you're ready for a loaded answer. But I would think, I mean, there's obviously you have different buckets that these successes fall in, right? Like I think you kind of named a lot of them, and obviously as a player, there were things that I loved and moments that I remember that I won't forget, and just some of those. Just I remember one Saturday doubleheader, I was able to hit 2 walk-offs in 2 games, like
Wow.
in a one day, which was really fun and exciting, and so that was fun. Like just kind of like I actually enjoyed those moments. I think I would rather be in those moments of pressure versus the moments of like, oh, this doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Because my intensity and focus kind of shifted to a better place. So like as a player, that I would say moments like that are really what I desire to be a part of. The moments that, while you're in it, kind of feel like a little bit anxiety producing, but when you're on a field and you've worked on things for so long, it almost becomes second nature. And so as a player, I would say from a other side, like, and truly what I love, and we actually shared this with some of our players recently, because like I said, we're still going through some stuff as a team right now, but like we had 2 players that when I first became a head coach at Cairn University, that had some troubles off the field. They ended up getting into some things that obviously were poor decisions. And my wife, this was before we had kids, my wife would travel with us on spring break. We would make the meals for our players to kind of help save some money on the budget. And So they got in trouble. Their punishment by the school was they were suspended for 25% of the season, which is 10 games in a collegiate season, which is pretty
Yeah.
substantial. Uh, and but through that, they still held with us, and they helped my wife make the meals. So they were getting up at like 5:30 in the morning to help make breakfast, and they were helping pack the lunches for the day, and they were kind of learning how to serve the team in
Yeah.
ways that, because their decisions didn't impact the team, so how can they give back and serve
Yep.
through that? And truthfully, I think my wife has a bigger part to do with their development than me, but just their ability to like grow from that and learn from that to the point where they actually became captains their senior year, both of
Wow.
those guys.
Wow. Okay.
And I told the guys that we're kind of going through that right now, like, hey, you can take this one or two ways. You can go a direction that's like, hey, you can go down this path that's just going to keep bearing you farther and farther, or you can go down this path that like, hey, you can take the path of these two gentlemen who
Yeah.
have continued to grow. And like, we actually got to hang out with one of them this summer. I went golfing with them, and then we hung out with them and got dinner with them and their family, and they just had their first kid this past
That's
summer.
awesome.
So like, those are the things that you kind of see
Right.
as a success, and what I'm thankful for, people that poured into my life, but through that grace and love, but also accountability. We talked about the tough love piece, like
Yep.
accountability. There's growth through that, and so as a coach, I would say that's my biggest accomplishment. Like, we've won some big games, we've had some fun at some previous, but truthfully, and I hope it doesn't sound cliche, but like, I get so excited about those things,
Oh
and
yeah.
they don't always come to fruition right away either. Like, you don't always notice those things right away.
Right.
It wasn't really until this past summer where I was able to reflect on that and see that we're like, wow, like
That's
we're
huge.
still a part of this family's life and seeing that grow. So that's a loaded thing. So
Hey, that was perfect. I mean, it's like I teed you up for that. That's exactly what I think what people want to hear is really the best times of being a coach is when you're able to really show some of those tough loves and consequences and follow through. Because the consequence of you can't play 10 games, that's the worst thing that could happen because they're going to get kicked away with no bumpers and with no accountability and you know, you bringing them back into the fold and basically having them part of the team is probably one of the best things that could have happened to them. So kudos to you. I think that's fantastic. What about a time that you fell personally and you had to get yourself back up?
yeah, I mean, there's a couple moments I think, like, actually, like there, I think just in a career choice that I made, and then also just kind of like in coaching, even this first year as a coach, of like being at a place that had a little bit more expectation. So I'll kind of give a two-part answer if that's all right. But
Yeah.
the first one was just like, I kind of like, I had this opportunity after my 4.5 years of being a head coach at Cairn, and coaching with the Bananas down in Savannah for that summer. I had an opportunity to jump on board and be a part of something that was exciting to me at the moment, to help build a new sports complex in a certain region, and kind of run that and be a part of the group that wanted me to kind of oversee that. And it was kind of the first time in my life, and my faith's a huge part of what I do, where I felt like I was kind of operating outside of like God's will for my life in some ways, where He's gifted me in certain ways, and I'm so thankful for the experience I had there and the people I got to meet and be a part
Mm-hmm.
of there. But at the same time, it kind of drove me in the sense of like, man, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? And there's been a lot of times where I felt like I've got out of coaching, and God just finds His way to push me back into it. And I got to still coach a little there with a group of 17 you guys outside of like in the travel baseball organization, and I loved it. Like, I still love the coaching aspect of it, even with those guys. But it was a moment where I was like, man, I think I might be operating outside of what I'm supposed to be doing,
Yeah.
and I have a purpose of why I coach, and that is where, like, man, that was something I had to really kind of pick myself out of for about, it was 11 months I spent in that job, and just really challenge myself to still pursue and do a great job in a moment that was challenging for me. I wasn't always present with my that time, not even, I mean, physically, most likely more than I was as a coach, but mentally checked out when I was with them,
Yeah.
and really had to kind of reevaluate where I was in life. And that's when God kind of presented this opportunity to come here to Messiah, and that kind of opened up. And then kind of leading into that, my first year as a coach at Messiah was the first school that I'd been at, in terms of being the head, that there were expectations, and not necessarily unhealthy ones from
Mm-hmm.
the athletic director. We have a phenomenal athletic director here, and but it was expectations because what you see around you, like you walk down the hallway right outside my office, and there's 35 national championship trophies in the hallway. It's hard not to have expectations on your team,
Right, right.
and um, there were zero expectations coming into the season because they hadn't had a winning season since 2016, and they were 13 and 19 the year before, something like that, and uh, all of a sudden, and we're sitting at first place in the conference, and I was like, oh wow, like we actually can do something
Yeah.
here. We not only can we make playoffs, but man, we might have a shot to win this conference, and in a tough conference too. And I was just kind of like, I kind of got lost what could be and the down the road versus what we needed to focus in on that day and that moment or that minute at practice. I was like, hey, we need to make sure we're doing this in order to get here, where like just the daily process that I lost sight of. I lost sight of that, and
Yeah.
my wife actually checked me on it a little bit, and it was while we were sitting in the living room. It was the day before we were sitting at first place. We're about to go play the team that won the conference the year before, and I was like anxious, like more than I had been all season. And she's like, "Hey, what's going on?" I was like, well, I'm nervous about these games.
Yeah.
We need to win these games." She kind of just looked at me. He's like, "Oh, when did it become about winning?" And like, and I think that was a wake up call for me. And truthfully, we ended up, I don't know if it was because of me or just like the players were feeling the same way, but we hit like a 4 or 5 game skid where we kind of lost some games that we shouldn't have lost, and just kind of put ourselves from first down to almost missing the
Wow.
playoffs. And kind of were able to turn it back around and make the playoffs, kind of win some big games at the end to make it. But I would say that was in my coaching of like losing sight of the purpose. Like we talked about purpose,
Yep.
that foundation.
Yep.
My foundation was shifting away from what we were doing with these young men and shifting to like, how can we win this baseball game? And I lost sight of it. I lost sight of the purpose. And
You can always count on wives to bring you back. All right. Just ask that real simple question. Like when did it become about winning?
Yeah. I would say that's the biggest moment I had to pick myself up, at least recently that I remember.
Good.
There's been
That's great.
tons of things, but
No, I think that's really good. And what I love about this is, we get players listening to this and other coaches, and it's always fun hearing other people listening to the podcast. And then I have them on, and they're like, you know what, I heard so and so say this, and it's always good to hear that other people. Hey, we all fall. We all fall, and for whatever reason, we think that we've got to hide that. I think it's such a strength because you fall because that is what is required for you to learn how to get yourself back up. But if you never fall, then you kind of just coast and you never get better. And I think that's pretty awesome. So, this is a great time to transition. We're going to talk about your program. I mean, we got a few minutes left. You talked about it at the beginning, but I wanted to hold you off. So let's do a shout out to your program, what you love about it, what are the things that kids should be thinking about, why they should put it as a preferred school as they're thinking about, as they're growing up, not just locally, because you probably recruit from a Christian organization, you're probably recruiting a little bit more than just local kids, and so just what do you love about the program the most?
yeah, I think the program ties into the whole university, to be honest with you. Like I think all of our athletic programs do in a way. And the biggest thing is that they are cared for as a person here beyond what they do in a classroom and what they do on a baseball field or a soccer field or a basketball court. Like there's just so many things where like I've exchanged multiple emails with professors this past week about students and how we can get them to be better and grow. So there's not operating in silos here. Like there's communication that takes place amongst a lot of people here, including the Res Life staff and myself. And there's just so many great things where it's like, hey, how can we all do this together, help lift these individuals up to grow by the time they're done here with their 4 years, and some of them 5 or 6 with the COVID stuff. So I think that's where you get here that may be different than a lot of other places. And truthfully, like we do have great facilities. Like I coached them in Major Division I, and some of our facilities are pretty comparable to what they had. And,
That's awesome.
And they've made some upgrades recently differently, so they might be beating us now where I was, and at Belmont's a beautiful campus, so it's hard to beat a lot of what they do there. But in terms of facilities, like there's not too many Division III facilities that have what we have access to here in terms of a development standpoint too. A strength coach that gets to work with our guys in the off season twice a week and lift with them and run them through programs that is something that a lot of Division III schools struggle to get, and we're fortunate enough to have a system in place that allows us to have that. And so that, I think that's really what makes our program special as part of the school. But then also, like, our coaching staff, we have a group of younger coaches in a sense, and that, like we talked about, can relate, but also groups help push them to grow. Like our pitching coach was a Messiah grad who actually was drafted by the Mariners from here, and he's been here, and he's giving them almost a professional experience from a pitching standpoint.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of really great things that we've had 4 guys get drafted or signed by professional affiliated baseball organizations, one of them being Chris Heisey, who played 10 years in the big league. He's still involved with our program, and
that's great.
About to go play basketball with them after we're done here. And like, I think those are like you get to be a part of here that a lot of Division III schools don't have. And I truly think that's what makes it special here. Is it's not just the coaching staff, but it's the people around that are kind of wrapping around the whole program. They're going to help them grow and develop during their time here.
That's great. Well, you know what? Messiah's got a great coach. Shallenberger, you're great to talk to you today. This has been a pleasure, and I think that people that are going to be listening to this will really get a really good idea of who you are as a person and what the program and the university actually offers. Last thing, we brushed by it because everybody probably talks to you about it, but the Savannah Bananas, I think did you volunteer? Were you assistant coach? How was that?
Yeah, I was an assistant coach for
Okay.
them, so small stipend coach for the summer,
Okay.
but uprooted my family for three months to go down to live in Savannah for 3 months and coach.
The only question I have on it, I know that they play really good ball. I know a little bit about them. How much time does it take for them to learn their little routines? That's always my thing. They're all on. How long do they spend on that?
Yeah, it's a lot. I think that's where Tyler Gillum at the time, the head coach, and he's now actually involved with them now because they actually dropped the collegiate portion of that recently. But he did a great job of what the expectations were. And during our entire batting practice, like the pitchers that are involved with the dance routine are practicing for 45 minutes to an hour, and they're doing it in the locker room in like the second and third inning.
That's
and they're
crazy.
usually pitchers that are not hot that day.
Yeah.
And one of my roles pregame was to actually get the script ready, and so my job was actually to assign the players to the promotional pieces, and I had to fight some battles with some guys. Be like, hey, I have you signed up for this today. Like, coach, I'm not doing that today. And then most of them were like asking to be signed up for stuff.
That's
cool. There were times where like at practice we'd take 45 minutes to an hour to work on doing the haka and the intimidate team before the game.
Yep.
There were times we spent a whole day filming a video in downtown Savannah and dancing in front of random strangers downtown, and so it's a lot off the field. And like at the time, it was a circus outside of the white lines, but in between the white lines was really good baseball. And and now Jesse's a phenomenal human being, him and Emily and the owners, and they've seen something that they can continue to pursue and continue to go into people's lives in a bigger manner. So I would say the circus is starting to shift between the white lines a little bit more now that they're allowed to do that. The CPL doesn't have restrictions on them for that.
Right.
So,
hey, it's it's a cultural. It's one of those dynamic changes. It's really neat. It's one of the big talks about baseball is just how it's boring to the new generation. So I think anything like this to bring some excitement. I don't think it needs excitement, but I think it's a great way of kind of bringing some people into it that my wife loves watching them. I mean, that's one of the things that she brings up all the time. So, and I told her this morning, I'm talking to the guy that he used to assist there at that team. So Anyway, needed to just bring that up. But Coach, it's been a lot of fun. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. Good luck this year. And excited to watch your program and you grow and some of the players. And if there's anybody that, I'm also, I interview players. If there's anybody that you think might be a good person that would like to do it, I don't like pulling things out of kids. If kids like to talk, if they like to be part of some things, they have some things that they'd like to share. Those are the ones that I'm really looking for. It's more just about content and providing some good bits of life lessons that maybe a 18, 19-year-old kid that could speak to the kids that are listening more than you and I could do. And so if there's anybody, let me know. But let's keep in touch, and I appreciate everything.
Absolutely. Thanks.
All right.